Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Expats in Ukraine with your host, me, Corey. Today my guest, he is from the U.S. He is a journalist and editor at Kyiv Post, but more than that, he is my friend. His name is Jeremy Dirac. What's up, Jeremy?
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, finally, man. I always invite you, but you're always busy, so it's great that you finally came down, man.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad I'm glad to have the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, man, it's always great talking with you. I feel like, our conversation always flows, so this is going to be a good episode, I think.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, hell yeah. Is that a bad word? I mean,
kind of.
From like a Christian household?
It is allowed on sitcoms, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But anyway, so hell yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, we're gonna bleep that. Be careful. But yeah, let's get right into it. Why the hell are you in Ukraine, man?
Well, it's funny because I kind of got here by accident. I started out here as an English teacher, and I had been working in Slovakia before I came to Ukraine. And then I was thinking about taking a job in Poland. And I figured I had already been 3 months in the EU and I needed to leave the Schengen zone. So I was like, okay, well, let me check out Ukraine. And I was thinking, oh, okay, I'll stay maybe a few days. And I got into Kyiv, and I ended up going out to a restaurant with the owner of the hostel. Mm-hmm. It was owned by this crazy German guy, and we ended up.
What year was this? What year was this?
This was 2016.
2016. Okay. Oh.
So we ended up having one beer, which turned into two, which turned into three. And then he invited me to. He told me that he had a girlfriend in the village, who he wanted to stay with for a month. And he asked me if I wouldn't mind being the boss of his hostel for a month. And it felt like fate, so I agreed. So I ended up staying not just a month, but I ended up staying 3 years in Ukraine.
Oh, wow. No, I didn't know that part where you were working at the hostel. Because I remember I met you in 2016. Yeah, we met at like this foreigner meetup kind of thing. It was at PR Bar, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I haven't been there in years, by the way. Yeah, so I met you in
we gotta go back
2016.
some point. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know. We have to go back. We went to Wonder Bar when it closed.
Yeah, for sure.
Shame, man.
Good
Rest
old
in
Wonder
peace.
Bar.
But yeah, no, I didn't know that you were working at the hostel. So yeah, you were here 2016 for 3 years. Then you went to Saudi Arabia, right?
Yeah.
And then you came back, and now you work in media. So let's talk about Kyiv Post, man. Can you tell us what exactly you're doing there? I know you're an editor, you're a journalist.
Yeah.
What is your job?
Yeah, I mean, I should say, well, I used to work I graduated from UMass Amherst with a degree in journalism. And afterwards, I worked for some papers in upstate New York and Massachusetts for 3 years. And then I left it for a while and when I got back to Ukraine, I started out as an English teacher, but then I found myself working in journalism again at UATV. So I did that for a bit, and then I went back to teaching in Saudi Arabia. And then I had this idea after Saudi Arabia that I was going to travel the world, and I had some money saved. And the full-scale invasion began. And at that point, all my travel plans felt pretty superficial. I really wanted to, I had friends here, people who I cared about, and I felt like I had some desire to do something, and I wasn't sure what it was. I thought about like, oh, maybe I can help build some houses. I even thought about like, being a volunteer fighter for a minute, but I realized I'd probably shoot myself in the foot if I did that.
You don't have any experience, right?
I had no
military
experience in that.
No.
Yeah, but I do have a skill set, which is, in journalism. So it would be silly for me to do something else, actually.
No, it's also very important, telling the real story about what's going on in Ukraine. Because there's like a lot of propaganda coming out, and, Russia is really good at spinning the narrative.
Yeah,
and
it's so
making
true,
actually people believe it. So it's good that people like you actually work for these Ukrainian publications. So you're an editor first, but you're also a journalist second, right? Is that right? At Kyiv Post?
Yeah. Most of what I'm doing is editing, but every now and then I'll go out and interview somebody. For example, we actually did some cool video interviews at oh my God. Superhumans in Lviv, which I think you were there as well.
Yeah, I was there shortly after you got me connected with them. And then I was talking to the main guy that was giving us a tour. I forgot his name. What's his name?
Sergey?
maybe Sergey.
Oh God, I'm
But
sorry.
anyways,
Sorry
yeah.
if you're watching this.
Yeah, I was talking to him and I told him like, yeah, my buddy, he was here recently. He's from Kyiv Post, and he goes, oh, Jeremy, Jeremy was really nice. Yeah, very professional. Yeah.
He was also very nice and professional. That gentleman.
Yeah, no,
God.
totally. But yeah,
Dude.
Superhumans was great. What'd you see there?
Well, I talked to a Ukrainian soldier who had lost his one of his legs, and what for me was very inspiring from him. And actually, for a while, I was visiting this hospital with a friend of mine, and we were delivering some things to the wounded soldiers, like shaving cream, like fruits. She was mainly delivering pineapples. Well, pineapples was always included amongst all the other stuff. And what I found amongst a lot of the soldiers and talking to this fellow was I was so surprised at how eager so many of them are to go back to the front line to fight again, even though they're missing limbs. And it's something that I wouldn't have necessarily expected before talking to people. Also, I ended up talking to a French surgeon who performed the first facial transplant in the world.
Oh, wow.
And that was interesting.
And so that's not related to Superhumans. He was just there working, right?
He was there helping out Superhumans. He was giving some lectures, helping with facial reconstruction stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Nice, man.
It
Yeah.
was it was this project with where people from different countries could come and lend their expertise to Ukrainian doctors.
Yeah.
Which was very interesting. What motivated him was he was thinking about World War I and World War II, and he was likening this conflict to the previous wars, which I think we are in this kind of situation. We are facing something like World War III, but from my perspective anyway, and I hope that I'm wrong, the way Donald Trump has been going about it, he's pursuing more of a Chamberlain path than a Churchill path.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's worse than Chamberlain at this point. Yeah, he's like openly, it seems like he's collaborating with the Russians, trying to lift sanctions. Did you hear about what happened where they got rid of the investigation into the kidnapped children in Ukraine? Yeah. Did you do any editing or reporting on this for Kyiv Post?
There has been an article. I haven't looked very much into the specifics of it, but what I had read was that Doge had cut the funding from this government group that was supporting this research that was going on at Yale University. And I watched a video with Adam Schiff. He's a Democratic...
Shifty Adam Schiff, huh?
Right. I think it was Adam Schiff.
Yeah, Adam Schiff. No, it's Donald Trump calls him Shifty Adam Schiff.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was maybe you might have actually posted this, but he was talking about how even some of the information might have been deleted that was about these missing children that were kidnapped and taken to Russia. So if that is true, I mean, it's already scandalous and terrible if it's true that the funding was taken away, which seems very much to be the case. But if the actual research and information was deleted, God, this is beyond the pall.
Well, in your journalistic opinion, do you think that Donald Trump is compromised, or do you think Donald Trump is just a useful idiot, or why do you think that he's so soft on Russia compared to being so hard on Canada and the EU and all the allies?
Well, I can say that let's say that he was a Russian asset. From my perspective, the question of whether he's compromised is almost academic, because he's already doing anything that you would want him to do if you were the Kremlin. Now, just to engage in this academia, I kind of lean towards the possibility that he may be. And some people will tell me that I'm crazy for that. Okay, fair enough. But I think what is that? There's this AI, I forget what, Grok. Have you heard of this Grok?
Oh, Grok, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like this. It's on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so basically they asked Grok, is Trump a Russian asset? And it objectively looked over all the information that it could find about Trump and deemed that he more than likely was.
Yeah, it said, I think I saw this. It was like 90 something percent that he might be like a Russian asset. And Grok is this AI tool used by X, formerly Twitter, and all of this. So it's basically Elon
It's
Musk's.
Musk's,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Searching, or not searching, but AI. But yeah, because I think there has to be something there because he is alienating like all our allies, talking about Canada being the 51st state. And maybe it was a joke at first, but it's not funny anymore. He's
Right.
repeating it over and over and over, talking about, he wants Greenland's, talking about Panama Canal is ours. Isn't he supposed to be the president that ends all the wars? He wants to have peace in the world. He's not going to start any new wars. What the hell's all this?
Yeah, and I mean, as I understand, in the 80s, he had inherited his money from his father, and then he went bankrupt. And then he had gone to Moscow, and he got money from some Russian oligarchs who bailed him out. And as I had read, they actually not only bailed him out, they gave him a lot of extra money for the property that, So there's this long history, and also just the fact that Trump criticizes everybody. I mean, he criticizes Purple Heart veterans. He'll criticize POWs. He'll criticize the disabled. He'll criticize our allies. He'll especially criticize our allies. But the one man he never criticizes is Vladimir Putin. And I think that that's noteworthy.
Yeah. And didn't Putin make him wait up to an hour for that phone call?
Yeah. Did you see this video?
Yeah. And then he was laughing about it when someone asked, like Putin was laughing about it when someone asked, like, isn't like Trump waiting for the call? And he's like, oh, he can wait or something.
Right.
Yeah. It shows like a lack of respect, but he says that Putin is the only one that respects. Donald Trump's the only one that Putin respects, which is laughable. Yeah, I don't know. So I think there is something there. I really do. And speaking of all of this, we're talking about, Russia and U.S. relations. Let's talk about U.S. Ukraine relations. What do you think about all of this, ceasefire, minerals deal, all of these, I guess all of these negotiation tactics that the U.S. has been doing?
I think we have to look at any deals with Trump's administration in the context of Trump as a businessman. And a lot of folks who have done business with him have said that there's not a contract that he hasn't wanted to break or sought some advantage from. And I think that it's probably no different with this minerals agreement, or now it's like talking about taking over the nuclear power stations in Ukraine. The guy is, if for Ukraine, to actually engage in some of these deals would be absolutely horrendous. I mean, they were talking about the first draft of this, and it was compared to the reparations that Germany had to pay after the First World War. So it's just an absolutely terrible, horrendous deal. And if we're talking about Trump claims it's $350 billion that the U.S. has given to Ukraine, which is not true. According to the Kiel Institute, which is a nonpartisan think tank based in Germany, it's about $120 billion that the U.S. has provided to Ukraine. And meanwhile, if you're going to talk, there's a group of Ukrainian economists who actually looked at the value of the aid that the U.S. provided to Ukraine. And because a lot of the weapons aren't that useful or good, and a lot of the money that has been provided to Ukraine was not in the form of direct aid, but rather as loans. This group of Ukrainian economists said it was something more like 68 billion that was given to Ukraine.
Yeah,
Sorry.
No, and people act like it's a blank check. Like they give Zelensky a check, just write how many billions of dollars you want, cash it at like the local grocery store or liquor store, and then just spend it how you will. And then now Zelensky's buying like, I don't know, Lamborghinis or something like this. It's not the case. They're literally just giving old weapons and stockpiles. And with
that they were going to just get rid of it anyway, in many cases.
And people are like, in the U.S., they're saying, why are we giving money to Ukraine when we could be helping our people? Like, are you going to eat like some artillery shells, some old tanks? Are you going to like eat this scrap metal? Like this doesn't help you at all. They're going to dermo it anyways. Yeah. So, no, I hate this when they say, why should we help? Like, dude, what are you going to do with all? You're going to give it to the police force? Yeah, so now you have like a military in your city.
And not to mention, like, first off, this aid, this 120 billion that the U.S. officially provided to Ukraine, like it was in certain terms, in terms of loans and grants. But like for Trump to come back and say, "Hey, you owe us for this that we gave you as loans and grants," no, it doesn't make any sense. And to not think that it makes it, to think that it makes any sense is absolutely insane to me. But also, how much is the value of the nuclear weapons that Ukraine gave up as part of the Budapest Memorandum? Probably over $1 trillion. So in fact, if we're going to, put it in perspective, I would say the U.S. owes Ukraine a pretty penny.
Yeah, I don't know, Donald Trump, it seems like he's a mob boss, and it's just like all racketeering. He wants protection. Ukraine doesn't have the cards, or whatever that means. Yeah, but I don't know. I just feel like we're living in the upside down right now. The U.S. used to be, this beacon of hope and safety and democracy, but now that light has faded, and it's become really dark in the U.S. And even I've seen these town halls in the U.S. and where Republicans hold town halls, and even their constituents. I always say it wrong. Constituents, even they are starting to get fed up with what Doge is doing, what the Trump administration is doing. And I know Donald Trump, he is from New York, right? How do people in New York feel about Donald Trump?
They hate him. I mean, of course, there's some people that like him, but I mean, yeah, this is why he runs off to Florida all the time.
Exactly, man. Yeah. But yeah, so let's go back to talking about Kyiv Post and your work as a journalist here in Ukraine. So since you've been here a long time, so you understand the reality, you do a lot of reporting, you do a lot of editing. What are some misconceptions that the American media gets wrong compared to what the Ukrainian media is capable of?
Oh boy, it's actually kind of difficult to know where to start. I think the American media also faces just the trouble with the Trump administration is it also applies to the U.S. He just repeats the same lies over and over and over again. It's like he can say things like, okay, we spent $350 billion in Ukraine, and Volodymyr Zelensky has a 6% approval rating, all this kind of stuff. And I think one of the problems is that some of these misconceptions can easily get through. I think probably one of the biggest one is, for example, Trump was recently talking about Ukrainian troops being encircled. And presumably he's referring to the Kursk region in Russia, where Ukrainian troops have partially occupied a territory about the size of Luxembourg since last August. Well, they've recently had to retreat, and the reason why they've had to retreat, it's thought to be because after that scandalous meeting between J.D. Vance, Trump, and Zelensky in the Oval Office, Trump had a pause on intelligence to Ukraine. And it's thought that this might be directly responsible for these troops in Kursk having to retreat. And it could have cost hundreds of casualties. But nonetheless, the way that Trump told it was he said that he was talking on the phone with Putin, and that thousands of Ukrainian troops were encircled, and he asked Putin to please not kill them, and Putin agreed not to kill them. And it's just an absolutely made-up story. So, and I think there's this kind of thing. There's also, I think that the U.S. general public doesn't actually realize how well the Ukrainian military is doing. In terms of many military analysts think that the future of this war is in drones. Whichever side is able to produce the most drones the most effectively is going to win, because what's happening is you're having these onslaughts of soldiers coming into battle, and they get turned into meat by these drones. And the leading producer of drones right now is Ukraine, more than Russia, more than China. And if it keeps at this, it's also developed the Neptune drone missile, which can fly, was it 300? It can fly very far. It can fly very far. So I think with these drones. Actually, even in the past 5 days, there's been a single day where the Ukrainian military hasn't attacked either an energy facility or a military facility in Russia. And I remember when we first started hearing about these attacks within Russia, it was like big news. Now it's a daily thing.
Yeah, they attacked the Engels Air Force Base.
Right.
It was a huge explosion. Yeah.
Dude, it's happening all the time.
Yeah.
And I think the American public isn't following at this granular level how the war is going. And they're generally thinking, okay, and this is the narrative that's being pushed by Trump and Putin. Unfortunately, to say that the American president is pushing the same narrative as the Russian leader. But nonetheless, the Ukrainian military is actually doing a lot better than it's thought by the American public, I would think.
And, speaking of misinformation, Russia is the master at it, like misinformation, disinformation. How do you, as a journalist, I guess, combat all of this, misinformation, disinformation coming from Russia or the U.S.? What is the best way to combat this?
Well, I could say that what we've been trying to do is do fact checks. So there's the false story with the misinformation.
And how do you identify misinformation, first off? Like, do you just, you're questioning everything that you hear?
I think actually what you can do, the first step is ask who's the one that is producing the misinformation. Now, of course, the disinformation, misinformation, it can even come from allies without realizing it, because, this is one of the effects of Russian propaganda. It's very tailored, and sometimes the propaganda is meant only to divide, and it might be something that has nothing to do with Ukraine or with Russia, but it might have something to do with LGBT rights or abortion or something that is going to rile up the public, or immigration, something that's going to rile up the public, and it's very nuanced depending on who's giving it. But in general, I think if you're hearing it from the Russian side, it could be true. It could be absolutely false, or it could be something that's a little bit true and a little bit false. And this is, I think, some of the most potent stuff if there's some element of truth to it, and there's a little bit of false news, disinformation in there. So I think the main thing you can do is look at who's saying it, and then also if it's something super scandalous, just okay, are the Ukrainian troops encircled right now? Well, you want to check, is that true? Is it right? And then you can ask. To be fair, we don't have someone on the ground in Kursk from our team of journalists, but the Ukrainian government says that the Ukrainian troops there are not encircled. And if you look at open source media, including Deep State, and including from our defense correspondent has been talking to lots of folks in the military, and all the signs that you see when someone is encircled, that there's been a lot of losses. You're not seeing that happening right now.
Yeah.
So
I've worked in for a few media companies already, and I know it's very important to get all the facts correct, but it's very important to get something out as soon as possible, so you're the first one that is reporting on it, so you get the most clicks, views, and all of this. How do you balance that out when something is very time sensitive, but you don't have all the facts right away?
This is a real struggle, and this is something that we're trying to do as well as we can. It's sometimes we don't do it perfectly, but I think it's important to. It's not a cop out. Because you can't say, let's say, I don't know, the White House is burning, says Telegram page, but I think it's important to say where you're getting your information from. Of course, this is just important all the time, and any time in journalism, but yeah, that's a big thing. And also check is there more than one source of this information? Is it just a Telegram page, or are there some folks in the military who are also saying this thing? Are there some folks in the government who are also saying this thing? And if you've got a few source verifications, then at that point it's worth publishing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's just, when I publish content, I want to be, as fast as possible, but I always have to. I'm not really the best at, digging in the facts. I have my team, dig in, make sure like this is accurate, and then I publish. But I know it's really hard to do both, especially when you want to be the first to publish it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally understand. But
And
yeah,
I've definitely just in like my own personal social media, not with the newspaper, but my own personal social media, there have been times where I'm like, I'll get riled up and I'll repost something, and then I'll understand that actually I maybe should have held back because that wasn't quite checked out yet.
Yeah. But so you've done a lot of reporting. You've been editing. So how long have you been with Kyiv Post?
Almost 2 years.
So you've been with Kyiv Post for almost 2 years covering the war. So you came across many stories. What is some story that stood out to you that you wish more people were aware of, or something that just like touched you where you read it and you're like, oh wow?
I would say that actually this week we had a story, and it came from Germany. And Germany is talking about massively increasing its defense budget. And it might even, over the course of 10 years, have a larger defense budget than Russia. So with the U.S. Seemingly leaving Europe and Ukraine, I think it's worth noting that Germany is a light in the dark. And we just published a story about this a few days ago.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the countries in Europe, Western Europe, or Eastern Europe as well, they're preparing for something.
Yeah.
Because they know something that we probably don't. I heard that the Baltic states, they withdrew from this, I guess, landmine kind of.
Oh yeah, Poland did, and Poland. From the landmine, it was like Estonia, Lithuania, Poland as well.
Yeah, can you talk about this for a second? Because it's like landmines. I don't know, something like
Ottawa Convention.
Yeah, okay, Ottawa Convention. Yeah.
And it was an agreement that they weren't going to produce landmines, but now recognizing that there's an aggressive country at their borders, these countries are realizing actually we need those landmines. And Poland is even talking about wanting to develop a nuclear weapon, as far as I've heard.
Yeah, I mean,
and I know that they've asked the U.S. to position nuclear weapons in Poland, but I mean, if Trump is a Russian asset, he's probably not going to go along with that. But we'll see. Hopefully, we're wrong, and in a few days, Trump's going to be like, "I was just kidding, guys. We're going to fight against Russia and we support liberty and democracy, etc." Anyway.
Yeah, the U.S. was this nuclear umbrella for all of the allies. And that was good because it just, the U.S. has the nukes, their safety. Now all of that has been flipped on its head. So now all of these countries are wanting nukes. And in the future, this is not good. A lot of these small countries having nukes. And the only way to ensure safety now is if you have a nuke. This deters somebody from invading you. So now all these countries are going to try to nuke up. And in the end, this is just one step closer to the end of the world.
I mean, at least as far as Europe is concerned, I've heard about France extending the nuclear umbrella. I want to say I've heard about Germany doing it, but well, don't quote me on that. Okay. Anyway, I'm not really certain. But I think as a precedent, if we look at the Budapest Memorandum, what happens when a country gives up its nuclear weapons in the promise for protection? Well, the U.S., the U.K., and France promised to protect Ukraine, and well, it doesn't seem to be right now. The question is, would Russia have invaded if Ukraine still had nuclear weapons?
Yeah,
and it doesn't set a good precedent. So if I were a small country and I wanted to be protected, I would probably want to have some nuclear weapons.
Yeah, no, it's a good deterrence, and with the U.S. backing out of support for Ukraine, this sets a bad precedent, especially for Taiwan, as well. Because China might make a move, and if they understand that the U.S. is just going to ditch their ally once they feel it's not beneficial for them anymore, then Taiwan maybe should consider getting some nukes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. The world is a really messed up place, and you've been working at Kyiv Post for 2 years, and I'm sure your perspective on this war has changed over time. Can you talk about that? Has your perspective changed? Were you optimistic at first that the war would just be a quick war? Ukraine can push them away. Ukraine maybe would fall. And now you're thinking something different?
I think I was at the beginning, I was a little bit more optimistic about Ukraine potentially getting back all of its territories, even optimistic about potentially getting back Crimea. And I'm not saying that these things are off the table, but it's difficult. It's a very challenging situation right now, and a lot depends on the allies. But that said, I think just to reiterate, Ukraine has been developing its drones, its Neptune drone missiles, and I have a lot of faith in Ukrainian ingenuity and drive. So I think also if we look at not only the the counterattacks that were happening from Ukraine, the counteroffensive in 2022, but also Ukraine's success in the Black Sea, virtually destroying Russia's Black Sea fleet. I think I'm actually still hopeful despite everything, and with the path that the U.S. is taking right now, I hate to say it, but I kind of expected something like this from Trump. Based on his past actions, I thought the writing was on the wall. So,
Yeah, I know. I'm getting less optimistic as well about Ukraine, getting their 2014 borders back. But I know when it comes to history, especially of Russia, everything is fine until it's not.
yeah,
When the Russian Empire fell, it was just they were losing the war. Then Lenin came, they had this revolution, and now it's the Soviet Union. Then when the Soviet Union fell, there was like a string of, I guess, unfortunate events for the Soviet Union. But then one day it's gone, and now Ukraine is independent, along with many other countries that were in the Soviet Union.
And dictatorships across the world, this is also true. That it's like everything's fine until it's not. It seems like.
Yeah, and so I'm holding out hope for this. That one day, something will happen, and there'll be chaos in the Kremlin, and then the troops will just retreat because they have their own internal problems to deal with.
I think it's worth actually just remembering, like when the Wagner mercenaries were approaching Moscow, like they got pretty far.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Russia's not as strong as people think.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I wanted to talk about the current state of the war as well, since you were talking about Russia's not as strong as people think. So Ukraine is still in Kursk, but not as much as it used to be. They don't hold Suja anymore, but now they're starting to make a push in Belgorod, right?
Oh, I haven't heard about it.
Oh, you didn't? Nah.
You got me on it.
Yeah, they're starting to make a push like in Belgorod right now.
Yeah.
It's just they've taken one village only, but there are claims that Ukraine is trying to make pushes into Russia, so Russia has to divert their military to protect their borders, and this is why I don't know if it's a coincidence or maybe it's a consequence of that. Ukraine is also making ground in Toretsk, and you know about this, right? Yeah, because on the east, I guess Ukraine is slowly making ground in different areas because of all the resources that Russia had to put into protecting Kursk region, as well as now Belgorod. But yeah, how do you feel about this Kursk incursion? Do you feel like it was a success? Because I read that I guess it was the Ukrainian government or something like this. They were calling it a success. This Kursk incursion. Do you feel like it was a success?
For me, it's a bit early to tell whether it was a success or not. I do think that it diverted a lot of Russian resources. I think it's unfortunate that there was the pause in intelligence. But I also think as a general strategy under Syrsky, there's a focus on saving Ukrainian lives. Giving up a little bit of territory, the Russians retake it, but they take heavy losses. So it's difficult to say. I think Ukraine really went into Kursk. It took a lot of territory very quickly, and there's been quite a lot of Ukrainian POWs which have been returned, and that is priceless. So I kind of leaned, I guess, towards saying that it has been a success.
The reason why people say it's a success is because they understand that they're not going to hold Kursk forever. It's not like they're going to incorporate it as part of Ukraine. This was like maybe a bargaining chip, or this was, a strategy where they can divert Russian resources But in the end, they're losing like 1,000 something. They were getting 1,000 something casualties a day, the Russians, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And ever since the Ukrainians were in Kursk, it seemed like that number was going up. From before they made their incursion into Kursk, and also it got North Korea involved. So now there's North Korean troops, trying to push back the Ukrainians in Russia, and it came to North Korean casualties, and also there was North Korean POWs, which is wild. And I want to ask your opinion on this. So if Russia can bring North Koreans to defend their borders in Russia, because North Koreans haven't been in Ukraine, they've just been pushing out the Ukrainians, from the Russian territory. Do you think that Europe should put European troops in Ukraine? Because this is a red line, a line in the sand, for Russia. Putin said, there can't be any foreign troops in Ukraine. But do you think this is I know this is hypocritical. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I have to start out by recognizing my bias. I feel in some ways like an adapted Ukrainian. So I want anything that's good for Ukraine. But for me, I think what has been a problem really throughout the Putin regime has been the West's inability to take firm stances. The West has repeatedly, oh, don't do this. It's been hesitating about everything. And I feel like what should have happened was there should have been a no-fly zone immediately, just like there was with Israel. And I think before February 24th, 2022, the West should have come together and said, hey, this is our red line. Don't invade Ukraine, right? Instead of letting Russia dictate what the red lines are. The West should dictate the red lines. And I think when it comes to Western troops in Ukraine, Russia shouldn't have the veto on this.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. I had Joe Lindsay on my podcast many months ago, and you know Joe, right? You met Joe.
Yeah.
That one event. Anyway, so Joe was talking about this many months ago about red lines. Like, why are we letting Russia dictate where the red lines are? Why don't we just say, hey, if you invade Ukraine, like the very beginning, you invade, we're giving Ukraine everything they need to push you guys out right away, and maybe we'll even put troops in if necessary. But we'll do everything that we can to make sure it's a failure for you if you step one foot inside Ukraine. But they didn't do that, and it emboldened Russia to keep going.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I think that that's a fair criticism of Biden for the Republicans out there. But that said, out of the American presidents that we've had, Biden's probably been the best one for Ukraine that there has been. And Trump has absolutely been the worst one, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people thought, once Trump got elected, people were cautiously optimistic that he would do the right thing. He's very unpredictable, but also he's a strong leader.
Yeah,
and he doesn't take any guff. Yeah, and so he, there were thoughts that, okay, he'll try to negotiate, and obviously Putin's not going to negotiate. He doesn't want to stop the war. He wants full victory, and Ukraine is the one being invaded. So maybe Russia will have Putin sit down and flex on him a bit, saying, if you don't, negotiate, give this back, they give this, then we're going to arm Ukraine to the teeth. There's a lot of people that thought that. Unfortunately, that is not true at all.
Yeah. And I think the media was ready to jump on this possibility. The moment, because everybody is just waiting for Trump to say anything that is not complimentary about Vladimir Putin. And he just, there was a moment where Russia had just dropped a bunch of bombs on Ukraine. And this was right after Trump had criticized Ukraine for something or other. And then Trump hears about this, and he's like, oh, we might have to sanction you. And the thing is, sanctions, where have you been, man? Sanctions, how about military aid? We've been sanctioning. You're the one who's talking about dropping the sanctions that are present. It's a joke,
Yeah. No, and what do you think about the current state of the war right now, where the borders are, what's going on? What do you think about it? Do you think it's going to be a long war of attrition? Do you think Ukraine is making some good gains? Do you think, I guess, they're losing too much land? What are your thoughts on the current state of the war?
I think it's been fairly static. I think Russian troops are fairly exhausted. I think it's a war of attrition that has been like from the long term has actually been kind of working out for the Ukrainian side. The Russian losses are a lot greater from the soldier perspective. Um, of course, Ukraine has lost territory. We can't ignore that. But again, I'm very hopeful about Ukrainian drones,
Yeah.
Ukrainian ingenuity, Ukrainian missiles. I, I, I think it's not all doom and gloom out there.
Yeah, no, I think so as well. Like I was saying before, Ukraine is making some small gains, and plus it is Belgorod thing. I just hope that the U.S. changes their stance and helps Ukraine. I hope. I don't know if that's being realistic at all with the current government, but I also hope that the EU does the right thing as well and just gives Ukraine everything they need, because this is very important, not just for the security of Ukraine, but security of Europe. And the US, they're so far away. There's like an ocean separating like these continents. So maybe the US won't feel it right away, but Europe for sure will. And they need to really step up.
Indeed, and this is a battle for democracy and a rules-based order, ultimately. But there are some who are questioning how democratic the U.S. is going to be with Trump at the helm.
Yeah,
But
Steve Bannon just went on TV saying a reporter asked him, so you say that Donald Trump's going to run for another election in 2028? And then he said, yeah. And he goes, how are they going to do that? Isn't that unconstitutional? And then Steve Bannon says, well, we're working on it.
yeah, I mean, I think he's gonna try to stay. I would bet money on it.
Trump is old as dirt, though, man. You think
Yeah,
he's
but
going to make it through his term?
I think he likes power and he wants to stay in power by any means necessary.
Yeah, I just feel like they've gone so far in the U.S. Doing all this, illegal criminal activity that once they relinquish power, they're gonna all get investigated. And I don't know. I'm just losing faith in the Democrats as well, just to hold them accountable for all the crimes they committed. I hope that changes. But this is why they don't want to give up power, and this is why they're doing everything Trump wants, because they know once Trump is, not in office anymore, the Republicans lose power. There's gonna be a lot of investigations, like where's this money going? Why have all these executive orders not been, challenged by I guess the Senate and the House? Why are you just letting him act like an autocrat, like a dictator, through the executive branch?
Yeah, I feel like one of the only guys out there who's like standing up for Americans is Bernie Sanders. He's been having all these town halls and, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, Bernie
you're gonna
Sanders and
start it on.
AOC, they're doing a tour right now. I guess with Tim Walz as well. They're going to be in Vegas coming up. I just saw like a post.
Yeah, and they're getting
Yeah.
thousands of people at these rallies, and it's a pity the government, the American government, isn't supportive of the people.
Yeah. And
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
we're running
some
close to
portion of
time,
them,
but
yeah.
are you optimistic about the future of Ukraine?
I remain cautiously optimistic. I have so much faith in the Ukrainian people. I have so much faith in the Ukrainian spirit. Um, I think Ukrainians are people that love freedom, and when I say that they love freedom, it's not just words. It's they really are willing to lay down their lives for freedom, and I don't think that they're going to accept something that doesn't lead to them being free. And I think that they come together. They repeatedly have come together since the full-scale invasion happened. Just like little, if you have any Ukrainian friends and you're on Instagram, there's a chance that almost every day you're going to see some fundraiser for this or that company to raise drones for this or that company. I just have a lot of faith in Ukrainians, and I think that there's ultimately going to be victory. And if there's not going to be a victory, then I worry about the future of humanity itself.
Yeah, well said, man. Well said. So, is there something that we didn't talk about that you want to discuss really quick while we still have a bit of time?
Um, I think I'm good.
Okay, great. So if people want to follow you, because I know you have a social media channel that you're starting to grow and talking about, the war and news in Ukraine, maybe you want to plug that, or how can people reach you if they want to reach you? You can look in this camera and do all that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So if you wanted to follow me on Instagram, it's Jeremy.Dirac, Dirac. You can also check out Kyiv Post for the latest news about Ukraine.
Well, thanks for coming on. I'm going to do a sign off right now really quick. So thanks again for watching this episode of Expats in Ukraine with your host, me, Corey. If you like this episode, give it a thumbs up. If you want to comment down below and ask Jeremy where to get his sweater, you can do that. Or just ask him any question in general. You're going to read the comments, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. And if you want to see more episodes like this, subscribe to the channel. And yeah, thanks for coming on, Jeremy. I like to give the guest a handshake on the side over here.
Oh, great.
Oi, come on down. What's going on, bro?